we're going into an All Things 3D Friday episode recap. Today is September 26th, 2014. I'm your host, Chris, and this is my host, Mike. What are you doing?
Huh? Oh, sorry, I was tuning my Castle Clear. I come up with a new design there.
Dude, we're doing a podcast now. You can't be doing that.
Oh, all right. Jesus. Okay, hang on.
All right. Well, we've got all kinds of fun news items. Last week we had this last weekend we had the Maker Faire in New York, New York. A lot of interesting news items, of course, out of there all the time. Cool. It looks like a lot of fun was had. And really sorry that we had to miss it all the way over here on the West Coast, but I'm sure we'll get some recaps from.
Hey, you know,
our guests.
if our audience would send us a few bucks once in a while, you know, not making any request or anything, maybe we could put it in our piggyback, and next year we can actually be in New York
And cover the New York, you know,
Yeah.
you never know.
We may not be able to afford a hotel, and we'll have to hang out with the guys in the cardboard boxes, but
Yeah, we'll 3D print ourselves a little, you know, a little home, a little habitat. No, didn't work. Mike's not on board.
actually, yeah, there's a reason I'm not on board. Interesting. I must have. Okay. Just keep talking. Go ahead and.
All right. Well, my first news item for today is some interesting news. This is an art project. This is through iMaterialized. You know, they're a big 3D printing company, kind of like Shapeways. You can go get your stuff printed. This is on their blog. This is called The Secret Sensuality of Trees, Michael Winstone's Globe Trekking Race to Scan and 3D Print Trees Lost to Deforestation. So what he's done is he's going and traveling around, scanning, and then 3D print these trees that are in danger of being cut down, some huge trees. He's doing them small scale, but he's also doing full scale and turning them into bronze sculptures that sit permanently in places like this is one.
How cool!
This is one in Spain, Zaragoza, Spain, and it's massive and it's on permanent display. And he's doing an amazing job scanning these in. I would love to have this guy on our show if we could get him. He's doing every detail down to the bark. You know, he's scanning it in, then going in and kind of mixing it up. So we'll have to have him on the show and have him explain the process. So maybe we can get more people doing projects kind of like this, because I think it's really great, bringing about awareness.
Yeah, you know, it's not fair. I mean, I only get to see your links at the time of our show here. So I don't even have a time to formulate any questions, but maybe that's what you're intending. It looks pretty cool. So how is he actually 3D printing these?
Well, apparently, you know, I have a feeling that he's going through iMaterialized to get most of his prints done, but I do know that everything's getting done on 3D Systems machines, or so it sounds. And it looks like some sort of clear. It looks like possibly an SLA.
It probably is an SLA resin.
SLA prints, because they're kind of clear. They look resin-ish.
Well, that's a huge SLA printer then, if it can print something that large. As we'll talk about a little later, that's not the case in the prosumer or the low-end commercial market. So that's pretty big. So I'm wondering if it's in pieces.
Yeah.
So yes, let's see if we can get them on. So if you want to send them an email or send me the email, then we can go from there. Okay, so I'll move on to my next item, which kind of goes hand in hand with yours, if that was an SLA resin-based printer.
Yeah.
That is the Ri-Fi 3D, or the Solus, I guess is the name of it. You know, we had Brad Hill on, I don't know, a couple months back with his little RP that was a huge smash on Kickstarter. In 1 or 2 days, he easily exceeded his goal. And now he has to figure out how to make them. Now, he's quite capable of doing that. So, believe it or not, Brad sent me this link to Ri-Fi, I don't know, which is coming out with the Solus 3D. And I immediately wrote to Brad and said, wow, that looks a lot like yours. But at the same time, nothing against little RP. It's cool, it's cute, but this looks like something you could put in your living room. It really is extremely polished. It's nice to look at, and I'm really impressed with it. But more importantly, and let's see if they show it on the first page. They don't. Let's go to the product. If I understood correctly, this is going to be available on Kickstarter or IndieGogo, one of the two, for $1,000.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that you're finding more and more, just like in the standard Cartesian-based printers or even the Deltas, that the prices are really coming down. But this looks very nice, but again, it's just like Brad's. It has the angled mirror that reflects. And like many of these type of printers, they use DLP projectors, and they're swearing that you can pretty much use any DLP projector. And depending on the resolution, it depends on your quality. But the thing that really struck me, and as we both know, the little RP is great for its price, but its bed size isn't great. I mean, you can make some nice small components, but this is about the size of the Form 1. And that's going to lead me into a topic a little later about the Form 1, and maybe we'll actually have somebody join us from Formlabs to kind of discuss their pricing structure. But I guess I'm a little shocked at what they've done, and we'll talk about that a little later. But yeah, it looks nice. If you go to their webpage, they have a gallery of the types of parts they printed. Personally, and again, it might be a testament to Brad's skill, but his parts looked a little cleaner. But they have a large variety of components. Notice the teeth again. I did that years ago. No, just kidding. But again, it's an example of the quality, and this is always a cool little
It says
thing.
25 micron resolution on this printer, by the way, which is
And
really great.
that's my low end or my high end on the Form 1.
Right.
But I wonder how quickly it can print it. One of the things about the Form 1 Plus is that you can now double its performance. But again, we'll get into some caveats on the Form 1 Plus.
Well, really the exposure time or the layer time, the print time on the DLP printers really is dependent on the UV lumen output of your projector. So how intense that light, that UV light is, because that's going to decide how fast it can cure each layer.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's a couple things. One is, as you said, the number of lumens. But remember, most UV or DLP projectors emit a white light. And some people, and we're starting to see a possibility that there's going to be newer projectors that are specifically made for the SLA market that are using UV. So once you can narrow it down, you can probably double the amount of energy if you go to a particular wavelength, and that's the direction they're going. Right now you're just flooding it with white light, and it's the UV that's curing, but you're literally throwing the entire kitchen at your project. And yes, but the thing is, you can buy an Acer projector, the low end, for about $300 for 3,000 lumens, which was unheard of just a couple of years ago. At that price range. And then I got an HD version for about $500, which is 19 or 1080p, 1920 by 1080. That is also 3,000. So yes, you're right, Chris, that the number of lumens determines how quickly you can print. Whereas with a laser, it's the wattage of the laser itself, and that's one of the things that the Formlabs is touting with their Form 1 Plus, is bumping up that energy.
Well, because before, my understanding, they were using basically an off-the-shelf Blu-ray laser, but now they have more resources like angel investors. They've sold a lot of these units. They're becoming a bona fide company now. They're able to actually develop their own specialty hardware. So they've actually developed their own laser for the Form 1 Plus.
Yeah, I haven't heard that they actually designed their own, but I'm assuming that they can put more money. They don't have to buy a consumer. They can probably go to an industrial grade UV laser, and plus that was probably designed about 2-3 years ago, And in that time period, there's probably even stronger or higher wattage. And the key is a UV laser is based on a diode, and that process has improved over the years as well. So you're now getting more wattage um, and better cooling, and these are all important. Now, again, like you said, it's going to be expensive, in which we'll talk about what they've done in a little
Yeah.
while. Okay, so on to the next item, Chris.
So I love jump starting tech. The thing I like to do is follow technology through all of these stages and see how collaborative kind of creation comes about. This is a great article. I really love it. We're gonna jump right into it. It's a YouTube video. It's called WirePrint. Some of you may have seen it. It's new to me. So essentially, one of the things that I've WirePrint, what came out about 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, was that little pen. The 3Doodler it was called. Do you remember seeing the 3Doodler? Okay, so the 3Doodler, right? You can basically draw in 3D space. It's essentially like having a hot end on a pen, and so you can by hand kind of 3D doodle. So this is like mixing your 3D printer with your 3Doodler. It's called WirePrint, and it's to speed up the iterative process. Let me turn that down. So it's essentially printing like the skeleton of your model so that you can kind of get a, so this model here is showing, for the people that can't see, it's a bottle. It normally takes about 2 hours to print, and printing it in a wire skeleton takes only about 14 minutes. So you can go through your iterations. Sense. Yeah, so if you're going to do a fitment, like you needed a body cavity, or you're going to print a bumper, like something that was going to be big and a lot of material, require a lot of work, a lot of machine time, you might be able to get a fitment, or at least like an idea of how big something is in actual real space using a wire print. So this is like basically using the concept of that 3Doodler. It's like drawing like skeleton lines up and down.
So is this a piece of software that we're looking at?
It's a piece of software that these researchers have come up with. Here it is. Here it is printing. They're saying it prints really fast with the Delta.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And the Cartesian, it works with Cartesians as well, but it's not quite as fast.
Do you have a link to this?
Yeah, so you can go over to, you could just Google or you can YouTube WirePrint.
Or head out to our show notes when.
Or go to our podcast liners, or let me just. This is the link is kind of a little. It's a research project, so it's a little convoluted of a link. So you could find it in our podcast liners, or just go over to YouTube and type in WirePrint 3D printed previews for fast prototyping, and you'll see this. It's really incredible because again, it's showing that hey, the 3Doodler. You might not use the 3Doodler. Like I'm never going to use the 3Doodler, right? Like,
do you have one?
No, I don't have one, but I'm just not going to use it. It's like I've got a 3D printer. And
well, I'm in my my section a little later on tips and tricks. I'm going to show how the Doodler could be used. But,
sure. So my thing is though is that the 3Doodler, while some people may use it like for artistic expression and some people may not use it, it doesn't matter. It still contributed to this downstream like collaborative idea that like, hey, all these ideas are out there, and this could really be something big here. This WirePrint thing. I mean, I'm looking at it. Hey, for fitments, this could save me a lot of time and a lot of material. Like hey, that's not going to work. And knowing that in 14 minutes, or here's a 2.5 hour print normally, and with WirePrint, prints in 58 minutes. So pretty interesting. That was a good something that I'd share.
No, I think that's cool. And if you take this a little further, you're creating a framework. So then you could take fiberglass or other type of materials and overlay your framework in order to create a high-strength structure that you couldn't do using 3D printing.
I didn't even think of it from that aspect, Mike. You're a genius.
No, I don't know about that. I just have a lot of clients who say, "Is this all you can do?" Yeah, but no, I think that's very interesting.
Is this all you can do, Mike? Is manifest
Yeah,
ideas into reality
yeah,
quickly and
yeah.
easily and affordably? Is that all you can do?
Yeah, that's all I can do. Well, I'm not even going to get into my last person to come in the shop just wanted the tour and then said, "Well, I can still do that faster with my technique." And I'm thinking, okay, well, I'll leave that one alone. So let's move on to something cool on my end. And
Sure.
you remember you were talking about Bree um,
Yeah.
stepping down as CEO of MakerBot and then starting something new. Well, what they started was they called the Innovation Workshop at Stratasys, and their blog is called Bold Machines. And so I don't know, I was looking for a case on Thingiverse, but I also go out to GrabCAD, and we talked about them as well, because GrabCAD has solid models, whereas Thingiverse, everything is basically in STL for the most part. So if you want to use, solid modeling CAD software, either from Autodesk or from what's the name of the other company? SolidWorks is
Dassault Systems or
Dassault System. Thank you.
Dassault
System.
Systems.
Well, but you can go out to either of those. So I was looking for something, and I came across this character. And as you know, Chris, I do a lot of character building now, and I thought this is interesting. So what their project is that they're working on right now is something called Margo, which is a 3D printed feature film, and I don't know
Oh,
what.
that sounds
So
cool.
what they're doing is printing out all their characters, and so I'll go through really quickly, and well, that's it for there, but I will jump in. So they actually, I don't know if hired or the guy came aboard, but he's a 3D artist, and I've seen him a lot because I also work with, and I brought ZBrush. He's one of the feature artists there, and I said, gosh, you can tell people's particular art style.
Right.
So, I'll jump to the project. So they did an interview with Jose Elvis de Silva, and we'll go out to his site in a minute, but he's the one who designed the character. And I don't know, do you remember, what's her name? Dora the Explorer?
Yeah.
This is what immediately jumped to mind.
Okay.
And obviously these are some character illustrations of her. And one of the things that I notice is that she seems to be multi-ethnic, which I think is a good thing. And I read an article, a few months back that they say what a person's going to look like, I don't know, what, in 50 years is going to be, a combination of multiple ethnic, and they kind of, they use technology to actually show what that would look like. So I think it's interesting that the person there looks multi-ethnic, and then they modeled it. And this guy is an excellent ZBrush. Notice all the detail.
Wow.
So this is called the neutral pose. But one of the things, if you read the article, he talks about, okay, well, it's one thing to create an object, but you have to also design for 3D printing. And I have been,
Sure.
over the last few months, working on that as well. If you remember actually, you didn't see my Winter is Coming, but if you go back to my previous, or last week when you weren't here, yeah, you can actually see it. I printed it in clear, so it's pretty cool. So maybe when we see each other Monday, I'll bring it with me. But if you can see, so he then divided it up in parts, but he talks about how he divided it up in parts. At different seam, notice how he created the neck here, not just cut it off, but tapered it so that it would fit into the neck socket here. And then the
And this
same
is
thing
so that
here.
he doesn't have to use as much support material or no support material?
Exactly,
Okay, okay, okay.
exactly. So that's one of the things. And he tried to use certain seams and connection points to prevent, as you said, less support functionality.
Talented people out there, I'll tell you that much.
Well, obviously he's talented from a 3D design perspective, but also to do this. And there's another artist, what's his name, that I've been wanting to get on our show. He's a 3D makeup, Rick Baker. Have you heard of him?
Rick Baker? No, I don't think so.
Oh, well, he has done a lot of makeup work over the years. You remember that one, not the latest Planet of the Apes movies, but the one that was
Oh, so
done
good.
after the original Planet of the Apes. They went back and did a reboot. It had Marky Mark in it as the lead guy,
Yeah.
and
I don't know
but
if
he
I
did.
ever saw that one.
Yeah, it didn't do well in the theaters. I thought it was okay, but he did all the makeup work for it. He is the
Just
person.
talent.
So one of the things, and I think I mentioned him maybe on one of our shows before we went into the 3D in Review series, but he created something using the MakerBot replicator too, and maybe that's what spurred this person to work in the same manner. That was just fantastic. It looked like a decrepit Popeye, like he was 100 years old. So if you go out there, maybe I'll
I
bring him up.
I I think I've seen that.
Yeah. And he said, yeah. So I've asked him to be on the show, and he said he's pretty busy, so maybe I'll ask him again. But he's kind of fun. So he talks about how he identifies the cut points, his character, and then obviously we're going through that again.
So
But what's interesting is that he. Go
Oh
ahead.
yeah, I haven't read this article. Is the movie itself like about 3D printing? Because I think that would be like even cooler. Like where they're in the 3D printing, like stop motion animation, right? But then they're talking about 3D printing, like their 3D printing replicates themselves or whatever.
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't really know where they're going with this.
I have a feeling. I have a funny feeling they're gonna have like a little mini 3D printed Replicator 2 or something in the back, of the movie.
Well, that's quite possible because, the thing that I did figure out is that this character, Margo, is looking for her parents so she's using all kinds of techniques to sleuth her way into figuring out where they're at. And if you notice, the character it shows MakerBot on the back of it, but it looks like some type of tablet. So this is the final printed version. And again, notice the diversity in the character versus whatever version this is.
Incredible.
And so, they probably airbrushed it. And if you go down here, here's Bree. Notice he's sporting this beard now.
Yeah.
But this must be one of the characters in it as well. So I don't know if they're actually
bad guy.
Yeah, obviously it must be a bad guy. But I don't know where they're going with this. I don't know if it's stop motion. I have no idea if these are just character. Well, one of the things that's mentioned, they're creating the models so that you could, like they're opening the store before the movie. And so essentially, I guess you can print out all the leading characters. So I'm wondering if it's just a 3D animation, it's not stop motion. I don't know. There's not much, and I've tried to look for more information and I can't find. But I think it's kind of cool. But again, this is Bold Machines. That's the name of their innovation workshop. So if you're wondering, what Bree's up to, this is what he's up to. So it's kind of neat.
Hey, this guy really is. I really still respect him. I think he's he's one of the few visionaries that he's a pioneer.
Yeah, well, he motivates the market. And obviously, he brings attraction to some of the cool things that you can print, which is the important thing. You got a 3D printer, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
So
along this, Mike, I do have to mention if you're interested in stop motion animation and you like this, you got to go over to YouTube and check out the Paranorman. Just type in Paranorman 3D print, the behind the scenes, how they pieced together that Paranorman movie. Unbelievable amount of work.
Well, let's bring it up next week because I agree. We both skipped it, but I think it's fun, and I did look at it. So back to the 3D artist himself. If you want to go out and see, and this is why I said that I've seen some of his work, this is some of the work that he's done. So obviously he's very skilled and talented.
Wow.
And so it'll be very interesting what these guys come up with in this movie, Margo.
I love that.
Back to you, Chris.
All right. Well, my next one is obviously Mike and I like to talk a lot about the health-related kind of 3D in medicine. That's one of our focal points a lot. So this one is called PrintAlive. Let's go to this.
Yeah. While you're looking for it, just want to mention that we are going to be putting on a seminar October. What day is it?
That's right. You're mentioning this.
Yeah. On October. Is it October 29th? Yeah. October 29th, we're going to be putting a 3D seminar that we are going to put on live on Google Hangouts on Air as well. So if you're not in the central coast of California, you can at least attend through YouTube or live if you like and solicit any questions.
San Luis Obispo Library, right?
Correct. It'll be at the San Luis or our county public library. They can seat about 150 people. And we're going to have an all-star cast. It's not just going to be the two blabbermouths, Mike and Chris. We're going to have the radiologists that we had and we interviewed a few weeks back. We're going to have Dan Kopp. We're going to have, let's see, I think George from Brazil, or one of his team members, to actually give us a tutorial on Invisalia. So it'll be really fun. It'll be an
Wow.
action-packed 2 hours. So put it on your calendar. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. on the 29th of October.
Very
Okay.
cool. All right. So along that, the 3D in medicine, this is PrintAlive 3D Bioprinter creates living bandage skin grafts to treat burn victims. So a lot of this stuff way over my head. I will be honest. Did not pay attention a lot in the human biology courses. A lot of it kind of went in one ear and out the other. But apparently they are using this bioprinter now, and they're able to make a living bandage for using the patient's keratinocytes and fibroblast cells. The bioprinter creates a biopolymer in a 3D structure that is able to mimic the epidermal and dermal layers of the patient's skin, printing out in patterns like spots and stripes, which is faster and requires far less cells than printing out a continuous sheet of skin cells. So the printer cartridge contains 2 separate tiny channels filled with skin cells for both the epidermal and dermal layers of the skin together, while with the liquid environment each type of cell requires. So as the liquid is squirted out of the printer, it solidifies into a gel, and both layers are printed out together, one on top of the other, creating a biodegradable wound dressing to treat the burns. So far, the PrintAlive bioprinter has been able to improve how wounds heal in mice with compromised immune systems, and will next move on to skin grafts in pigs. Human clinical trials with the technology are still about 2 to 3 years away, but the student's invention is so impressive it has won the top Canadian prize in the 2014 James Dyson Awards program of $3,500. So pretty cool. They're making a bioprinter, creates skin grafts. I mean, come on. That's just cool.
Yep, that's very cool. And I think we should reach out to him and see if he wants to talk to us.
Definitely.
So I'll put him on my list. Man, you just keep adding to my list, Chris. All right, well, on to the next item. And I'm going to segue from this article into
It's like a hand.
my Formlabs
Oh yeah, this is the lens.
rant and rave. But this,
Oh, the rant
yeah,
and rave.
I saw this and I'm thinking, huh? And the reason I say this is that if you remember in our last, well, obviously you didn't see it, but in the previous episode, I actually brought up an object that I had made using the clear resin. And one of the things that frustrates me the most with clear resin is that how it yellows. And one of the ways that you can minimize the yellowing is ensure that you use the same wavelength that was used to cure it to begin with. So as you've seen, and Chris, I've got this UV curing that runs with a bunch of 405 nanometer lasers, which is the same wavelength of the lasers on the Formlabs. So that reduces it, but that's not all. You need to put a protective coating over it. So then I see this, but the other thing is, once you cure it and use the alcohol, it no longer has that clear glass-like finish. When you're done with it, it becomes translucent, cloudy. And I'm thinking, how do you go about it, making something like that? So I don't know if I would go through the lengths that they did here, but one thing that I found is that I put on a UV protectorant clear coat on the top of it, and that seemed to bring back some of that shiny, glossy, clear material. So keep that in mind if you've got a Form 1 or any UV printer and you're using a clear type material. Just put a UV coating on it, glossy type, and that will bring back some of that glassy look to it. So into the article itself, I thought, wow, this is great. And obviously I've got a product out there called 4Eyes, so I'll just pitch it. That's an extension to the structure sensor that allows you to get more detailed meshes. So I'm thinking, wow, I'm kind of frustrated right now because I am kind of piecemealing my lenses, but maybe I should just make my own. But after reading the article, I don't know if that's what I want to do. So obviously you design your lens, but then, like a lot of things, you have to polish your lenses.
Well, yeah, any lens has to be polished.
Right. Well, I was hoping maybe they figured a way you didn't have to.
Oh, yeah. Well, you never know, you know? I mean, and again, this is just showing you a potential, yet another spin-off of this whole craze, the whole 3D printing craze, right? I mean, like, this is just showing you hey, what the paradigm, the current paradigm of lens production has to go through. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen a Canon lens being built.
I
Go
have.
check that out. Go check that out on YouTube. I mean, it is unbelievable
Yeah,
amount of work and
it is a lot of
resources.
work.
Oh, and just like so many different processes to get the glass perfect and all these things. Well, like this is an SLA process essentially doing this, right?
Correct.
Making a
Yeah,
lens.
it's
But
a Form 1.
imagine an SLS making it from silica powder or something, actually burning and fusing the actual glass. Like you just start thinking of all the potentials to solve like these complex manufacturing processes and doing it quicker and cheaper with less processing. I mean, like this could be a whole other wing of manufacturing that opens up because of this one little idea right here.
Yeah, totally agree. And well, one of the important things, and a lot of people complain about this with their Formlabs, Form 1, is the amount of support structure. You can't get away from it because of the way SLS, or I'm sorry, their SLA printers work. You literally have to normally print at an angle. Now notice this particular item is not being printed at an angle. So somebody, I think later on they mentioned that they've made some modification in order to do this. So if I probably tried to do this, it probably wouldn't turn out. But the reason they did this is to ensure stable layers. Because obviously if you show ridges internally, you're never going to get the optics. So
Sure.
by positioning this in a particular manner, they could use gravity or the flow of the resin in order to prevent layering.
Very
So
interesting.
kind of cool. So instead of having layers like this, if you can see my cursor, it's like this. So it kind of flows down. So that prevents, and if you look at any, even, it's really notorious in FDM prints, but even in SLA, you can look at an object and see the layers. They're still there. It's just smoother, but they're still there. So if you can define the positioning, you can prevent the layering, and that's what they did with their print here. So pretty cool. But well, I have a gripe about Formlabs, and I was
Oh
hoping
no,
that
here
I'd
we go
have.
again.
Yeah, but I'm going to let you talk about your last item, Chris, or did you already cover all your items?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we went
Well,
through
then
them.
I'll get right into it before. You know, I don't know if you've been following Formlabs, but they've gotten a lot of kudos on this new Form 1 Plus because and let me jump back to myself here, because it allows about twice the performance. We've got somebody here. Hi, who's joining us?
Colin. Hey.
Hi.
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
Okay.
Welcome to the
Uh,
program.
yes. Who am I speaking with?
This is Colin Rainey. I run marketing at Formlabs. I work with Sam Jacoby.
Oh,
Oh,
excellent. Well, we're right at the point. We just talked about your new optical lens and talked about it, and I was about to start talking about your new change in policy, so I will just drop it over to you and let you kind of explain the changes in pricing and some of the positives of the Form 1 Plus. How about that?
Sure, seems fair. So when we launched the Form 1 Plus in June, we realized that by upgrading the machine, we had a lot of really loyal Kickstarter backers that would be really happy with the fact that we just come out with a new machine so close to the Kickstarter. So what we tried to do was put together a program that would upgrade the laser, upgrade the galvanometers, upgrade the peel motor, and we put a 1-year warranty on the printer, so we could extend some of the same features that launched in the new machine to all the existing users. And we've been overwhelmed by how positive it's been. So probably hundreds of people have signed up for upgrades.
wow.
But what we realized really quickly when we started the program was that we had miscalculated how much it would cost to do the upgrade. So as we got rolling, we started to have to make a really tough decision, which was, should we shut down the upgrade program, or should we keep it going and have to change the price? And we had a lot of conversations, and we thought, well, the worst thing we could do is not offer these users this new functionality, and that even though we really hated to raise the price, it was the only way we could do it and sort of sustain the program. So it's weird to say that as we thought about our users, we raised the price, but the other option was sort of having to cancel the program. So we didn't want to do that, and that was the reason why we had to make the tough call. And what we did was we made sure that anyone who we'd been in contact with, we would honor the original price. So we still do that to this day.
You could kind of chalk it up to an early bird type thing. I mean, it's the same thing as Kickstarter. When you're an early bird, you kind of get a little deal. Those are kind of the lost leaders, if you will.
Yeah.
So.
And the nicest thing is really that the machine prints. I mean, it prints 2 times as fast. The laser is 4 times as powerful. And since you're really almost changing everything but the outer shell, I can't really say you're getting a new machine, but you're getting a like new machine, and you're getting a warranty for a year that, if you look really close, you don't hear a lot about warranties in desktop 3D printing because there aren't that many. In some cases, I think MakerBot has a 6-month warranty in the EU, or maybe it's
they honor it.
Yeah, so that, I mean, you know, it's hard to see through, you know, sort of web storefronts and stuff, but that's kind of how we ended up where we ended up.
Okay. Well, my only concern with the program, and there's a couple of things, is that, you know, we've been doing this podcast for about a year now, and so we've talked to some other people, and maybe that's part of the problem. We've talked to other people, and when this program originally started, you essentially paid for it and then waited in the queue, and then you literally had to give up your Form 1 for, I think, a period of 6 to 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Someone like myself who uses it on a regular basis professionally, that kind of alleviates any revenue during that time frame. So I had heard, and a couple of people that we've talked to, that there was a cross-shipment program that you guys were working with an additional $2,000 deposit. You could alleviate that, and I tried to get, you know, a little bit more information from Sam out of that, and it was really vague, and I really couldn't give up my Form 1 during that period of time. And so when I finally at a point where I can work with something else while I give that up, I noticed the price jump. And you know, right now there are a lot of other SLA type printers coming out that are about that ballpark, and even though they don't have your reputation nor your software, you know, it's like, well, can I continue with the Form 1 I've got right now, even though it's going to be, you know, half the speed and less power, and without the new can't even say the word, gavometer, or
Gotcha.
you know, some of the, and I think also you changed out the servo that controls the lifting bed, the peeler. So I know that you've made some changes. I just couldn't give mine up in the time, and I just felt like when I finally could, the pricing is gone. But I do understand that I think Sam alluded to that this program would be completely dissipated, and I'm glad that you did make that choice. So, yeah, I can see that, you know, because we're all in business and you have to make the right choices, and if you can't make money off of it, it doesn't make sense to continue it. So, but I didn't, you know, I think there should have been a better approach that, you know, if you don't get it in within this 3 months, it's going to go up, and I just didn't feel that that wasn't done.
Yeah, I think it's well spotted. The thing about loaner machines or cross shipments is, because it's such a precision device, you have to calibrate it by hand. And so if we had machines that we were loaning people to print with, and then they came back and then we had to loan them out again, we would have to calibrate them, or otherwise what we would get is like, hey, you shipped me this loaner machine and it doesn't work, which somewhere in the ways doubles our workload.
Right.
It would be...
Yeah, but you were doing that though, right?
Right. I was just trying to explain the complications of trying, like, so these are permutations we thought through to try and figure out how do we do everything we can to help people, especially people that do it professionally, keep printing. We even thought about, well, can we do sort of a waiting queue system, so when it's time we send them the box, but even that becomes very, very complicated for the size of operation that we have. So we just aren't at the level of sophistication to pull that off.
Okay. Well, and that's well understood, and you know, obviously I've got a personal need to have mine upgraded, but I just thought, in general, it would be nice to have somebody on. I'm glad that Sam stepped up and had you come on and kind of explain it from Formlabs. In my opinion, you started this all, and everybody else is imitators. And I've got something I'll be showing on if you wanted to hang on, but if you're too busy, I've got a fairly large object. I printed it in 2 parts called Ducati Girl. It's actually, I'll show it to you.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Let's check it out.
Yeah. And I'm also going to give a technique on air about how to use SLA resin and a laser in order to fuse it. But this is Ducati Girl.
Wow.
And essentially, I created it and then split it in 2. I used a program called, geez, now I can't even remember my own programs. I want to say 3D Paint, but that's not the word for it. No. It's called 3D Coat. And it's very similar to the ZBrush. And then I also use Mesh Mixer, so a combination of the 2. But 3D Coat has a tool that allows me to slice and then create a peg. So literally I have 2 pieces. So that's how I was able to print it, obviously.
Creates a joiner, it's nice.
So I printed it in 2 pieces, and if you go out to, I don't know, some of the tweets that I put out, actually I'm going to use it as the image here. You'll see it with its supports. So I broke it off, and a lot of people complain about it, but there are techniques you can do. One of the things is I don't normally, except the clear type products, leave these unfinished. I normally paint them or put some type of coating on them. So I use a lot of nail, what do you want to call it, buffers and things like that, because I find that sandpaper is a little too rough. So I use buffer pads.
He likes the smell.
No, these are just the buffer pads.
Yeah.
If you're married or you have a girlfriend, you should know what that is.
I do.
But so essentially, this I positioned it so that it actually conforms to the Ducati model, and this was in the news a couple of weeks ago. It's literally was done in an Ultimaker. It's like 150 parts that you put together. So if you can see, this is about an 8 inches from head to toe. So the Ducati is about 12 inches, and it will fit it. And I conformed the hands and everything so that it should work at the scale that you would print it. So I'm actually going to
she even has good riding form. She's like on the clutch, she's got the fingers on the clutch so she can ride safely, engage the clutch when she needs to brake, right?
Well, I'm a writer, or was a writer, so I knew these type of things. And her feet position are also the same way. So essentially that will be on it. Now a lot of people, and Chris, you pointed out, well, their helmet's not big enough. Well, this is more futuristic. She has bladders inside there that increase and decrease depending, and then you can't see it as painted.
Much stronger than their standard helmet today.
There are some pneumatic. There's some pneumatic tubes here that will increase and decrease pressure in order to provide injury prevention. So what we're going to do, and I guess I'll just stay with it, is essentially show you. And that's why I'm wearing these glasses here. These are amber glasses that are, if you're working with UV lasers, they're required in order to protect. So essentially, if you notice, there is a joint. I used epoxy, and somebody said, well, why didn't you just use resin? Well, the problem is you can't cure the resin in the gap itself. So I used an epoxy first to create the adhesion base, sanded it down, but if you notice, I still have a ridge here. So I'm going to actually put some resin across here to fill in that gap. And if you notice, I'm using black resin. Okay. And then I probably have to do multiple coats, so I'm not going to take a lot of time. And then on eBay, you can get 2 watt and higher. And watch your eyes.
I'm glad I have my goggles on.
Okay, good. So essentially, and you could use the line. This has a line optic, or in this case, so you just essentially you can diffuse it, but you run it across the object. And I found that about 30 seconds. And for an area, so this would probably take a few minutes to do. But
it's
essentially,
like a laser welder.
Yep, it's exactly. And so we were talking about what could the 3D doodler do? Well, something similar. You put PLA into it, and you melt it, and you can use the same. And that's one of the reasons I'm going to get one, because this works great because it fills these areas, and then you just sand it down when you're done. So you can actually, you may not be able to see it. I guess if I would put it in front of the camera, but essentially,
works pretty good too.
Yeah.
But if you want it to be all PLA, then yeah, you're right.
Well, but for small areas, it might.
I've even seen some people to weld ABS or PLA. What they'll do is they'll take a Dremel and put a little piece of filament in it and get it spinning really fast, and then put it on the seam almost like a plastic welder. You've seen plastic welders; they're essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
But you take a little piece, a little section of ABS or PLA, and put it in the chuck on your Dremel, and it just spins it around, and then you just friction weld it.
I'm going to try that. I use a X-Acto knife that I heat up, and then I carefully put it over the area to melt seams. So obviously,
if you have a soldering iron and you have an old soldering tip that you don't care about anymore, you can use a soldering iron to kind of solder plastic. Be in a ventilated area. That's all I can say, because it starts to get pretty fumey, you know.
Okay. So you can't really see it, but it is curing, and you can tell because the glossiness starts to change.
I can't see the model, Mike. Let's.
Oh. I don't have a long.
There we go.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm glad I'm wearing my goggles.
Yeah. Oh, there we go.
Wow. So is there a what's the advantage? It looks blue to me. Your laser.
Well, yeah, it's 405. Oh, look at that! Let's see if I can do it.
Fry your camera.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
No, there's a spot in it, but yeah, it's called the high end of the blue ultraviolet range. So that's what allows it to be visible. A true UV you wouldn't be able to see. So essentially, you would just continue that process, and it would harden it. Or in this case, I could probably just set it out in the sun. But one thing that I have found, the problem with the sun is it's like a big white light, and it has the entire spectrum. So if you're working with clear materials, that's probably not your best option.
It'll yellow your stuff, right?
It yellows it. So I have created
Colin, you might know. You work these lasers that you guys design into these printers. They work in a specific band of UV, correct?
That's the spectrum, yeah. I don't know the band of the spectrum, but that's right.
But there's like a nanometer rating or something.
It's 405. Right? I know that.
405 nanometers is what. So if you're looking for a laser, you probably want to be right in that band somewhere, right? That's my understanding.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's going to cure the resin because it's looking for that part of the spectrum to react to.
Right. Yeah, because we've had like Brian is a good friend of ours from Made Solid and then Maker Juice Labs. We know these guys, and my understanding is that they actually like there's a molecule that like disintegrates when it's hit by this whatever that range of light.
Yeah,
and it can activate the polymers and harden is essentially what it does. And so so what you want is a UV light that it specifically
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's been many articles, and I've actually contributed to them because I've tested these that say 405 nanometers, and you can buy these on eBay. I think this one is a 1 watt or 2 watt that I have here, but you can get them up to 20 watts. And the point that I make, exactly, is that even though I shouldn't be doing it this way, essentially you should put this in a vise or a third hand and keep your hands away from it, because if you do point it at it for any exposure time, you're not even going to feel it. Next thing you know, you've got damage. Plus, UV can actually do things a little more serious, as we know that UV can cause problems with cancer and things like that. And the other thing is make sure you're wearing type of safety glasses like the ones I'm wearing, because in this spectrum, they say, and I agree with them, that you don't really sense the amount of power because it's in the upper wavelengths. So if you point at your eye at any length of time, you may not feel any pressure or pain or heat, and next thing you know, you'll get a big dark spot. So
pop. Yeah, I mean, even some of those lasers, as they get more powerful, even just the point of reflection. So if you had someone who didn't have the glasses on like you're wearing, and they're looking at the reflection as they're centering it, it could hurt their eyes. So you just have to be really, really careful. But that said, it is a really useful hack to do exactly what you just talked about. So we see our users using it a lot, and we do it around the studio ourselves. So it's a cool technique you're sharing with everybody.
Take a tip from Mike though. Get yourself the goggles. They're not expensive. Definitely wear eye protection. You got to get the right ones that filter out that nanometer thing. Because lasers can really quickly do a lot of damage to your eyes. And I mean, like, I love to see. I don't know about you guys, but I like to have sight. So definitely,
it's kind of important what we do.
In like a day, you could basically, ruin your eyesight if you don't properly protect yourself. And so definitely, if you don't wear these, you're gonna have a bad time. Wear eye protection. So that's just a disclaimer from.
Well, again, Colin, I really appreciate you coming on, and
no problem.
Yeah, you're welcome to stay on. We're going to talk about kind of some more tips and tricks, and that we go through. Chris is our print whisperer, and he's going to have some ideas. Plus, I don't know if you're familiar with the occipital structure sensor. They just released their SDK, which I'm going to talk about a little bit. But I also do some iOS development, and I've created a product called 4Eyes that gives you about 40% more mesh detail that I've been working with. So,
is it out? Can I download the app?
The SDK?
Okay.
It's not an app. It's a lens system.
Oh, cool.
That you put over the top of it, and I use some high quality lenses from a particular photography camera manufacturer, and it really improves it. But there's some, I wouldn't say some caveat. There's a learning process that goes to it. But if you order one, you can go out to my Square Market, go out to Slow 3D Creators, and then look up 4Eyes, and it runs, I think, $59.
Oh, that's all.
Yeah, and essentially it's a 3D. Thanks to my friend Chris and his Fortis 250, he prints out my frames for me, and then I put in these lenses, and then I send it off. I also paint the interior with a red rubber coating to protect the front of your structure sensor, and it just grips it. And
it works great. You should see these scans that are coming off these off of Mike's 4Eyes in conjunction. They're just unbelievable.
And when you scan it, is it coming off as like an OBJ file?
You can.
You can export it.
Yeah, I use the structure sensor wirelessly with the Skinect software, which is a PC or Mac-based software, and there you can export it as SLA.
Oh, cool.
I'm sorry.
The one that I really like.
An STL, OBJ, and there's
RML.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'd run into the occipital guys a couple of weeks ago, and we were at a conference, and they were scanning everybody, and the software looks great. I was trying to figure out if and I was like, can I do this and run around and scan my friends and print them out? And they were like, of course you can. You have to convert the files. And so then I was trying to figure out. I mean, it seems like a device that they want to overlay, gaming and other things onto a world through the vision, and they're using a camera to do the occlusion and everything more so than the scanning. But you can still scan, so it seems like it could be exciting.
Well, that's the big thing that I purchased it for, and they're just trying to find other obviously markets to sell this thing, and one of them is the ability to overlay. The important thing is it does not include an RGB camera. It essentially is just the infrared projector and sensor, and then you use your iPad, which is what makes it cool. You have a completely mobile package. I have found, though, that the horsepower, and maybe that'll change with the newer iPads that are coming out, just isn't there yet, but you can get some rudimentary meshes. There's another company that we've interviewed called Itsees 3D, or actually Itsees, but the product is Itsees 3D, that uses the cloud to overlay actual color textures, and you can get some extremely good. So if you head out to my, was it Sketchfab? No. Yeah. Go out to my Sketchfab site, which is again is Slow 3D Creators. You can see a lot of the examples that I put out there, and then you can actually download a few, in fact, including Chris. Hope you give me permission to download you.
Of course, download away.
So yes, you can download these. You can send them off. You know what? Gosh.
I know there's probably a lot of ladies out there that want to build a Chris shrine. Want to have me on their shrine. I understand. It's freely available to you.
Yeah. Colin, no, I'm sorry I wasn't.
Don't do that. Bad idea. Just kidding. Yeah. So
hang on, Chris.
Yeah, go ahead.
I apologize. I had a couple of models that I actually printed on the Form 1. One is Winter is Coming, which I took space scans and then modeling and created a scene from, obviously, Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Kind of the Stark characters with some dire wolves. And I've got that out of Twitter as well. I'll send you a link.
Please.
Send me an email and I'll send you all these images.
I have an email set up for you. In fact, I was going to send it, and then I saw I could crash this, so I jumped on.
Great.
I'll leave you guys to it. You know that Print the Legend comes out today on Netflix, yeah?
Woohoo!
Hey, glad you mentioned that. I was going to
Yeah,
remind
that's a
myself,
big
and I
deal,
forgot.
right?
Yes, and
That's a
actually we
big
interviewed
deal.
that group, and you know what? What's great about that, Colin, is from what I've heard, MakerBot didn't look as good, but Formlabs looked great and really had. So I'm really anxious to see that. I'm going to convince my wife tonight. We're going to watch it. Yeah.
You know, I got to see. I've seen a lot of it. We were at Maker Faire last week. Max, our CEO, went for a panel. We got there a little bit late, so I didn't get to see the whole movie. I saw the last 20 minutes. But what you'll see is it's about 3D printing in some ways, but actually it's about sort of the whole. There's bits of the American dream and trying to sort of realize your dreams. There's sort of like what costs and what sort of tensions do you have to navigate. So it's really great. Stephen, Clay, and Luis, the guys who shot it, they're really sweet. And I'm really happy that it didn't sort of languish in sort of indie, never seen land. And I'm glad Netflix licensed it. So everybody should check it out because Netflix is streaming and it's free with their subscription.
Colin, I'm right. I'm glad that you reminded us because that was one of the big items that we did want to push. Plus, if you want to know more about the producers and the people behind it, we did interview them. What was it, about 6 months ago, Chris? You can check it out on All Things 3D and download the podcast. It's audio only, but it does kind of bring some things in from behind. They were actually giving their premiere. Where was it? In
probably in South by Southwest.
Exactly.
Awesome.
It was. Yep. And that's where we did the interview from. So.
Cool.
So again, thank you, Colin, and like I said, you're welcome to stay on, but we're going to continue. And I apologize, Chris, for
thanks for giving me the airtime. I'm going to let you guys get back to it, but I'll hear the rest of the show when I listen when you post it. Okay.
Okay.
Right,
thank
Colin.
you.
All right. Thank you very much. Be good.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. All right, Chris, back to you.
Okay, so I guess we'll just talk about my Print Whisperer tip for the week. Really easy one, or a really beneficial one that has just like finally, it's just like put my FDM FFF printing actually made it possible without jamming.
So this is part of the ongoing saga with your
ongoing saga of,
Max and the hot end?
Just learning and the learning curve that's involved. But what I found, especially with this all-metal hot end that I've been experimenting with and actually having really good prints coming off the printer consistently now, after you get your printer all calibrated, what I was running into is, it kept jamming up in the top of the hot end. And why was that happening? Okay, I got to turn up my retraction so that it pulls it out more. It doesn't jam, right? And then it would still jam, or halfway through a print it would jam, and then I would get a failed print. So what I found is, after doing some research and reading, is looking at the thermal signature that they've actually been, that people take an infrared camera and they look at these hot ends, and they'll run simulations on the computer to find out where the material in the head is actually melting. What they found, obviously, you've seen it on a lot of printers, have this as a standard thing, like the Ultimaker, is a fan right on the hot end, right, blowing across, cooling it, so that the material is only melting right at that tip, liquefying right where it needs to liquefy. It doesn't need to be liquefying up where the force is building. It needs to remain solid. So those fans are going to help keep it cool and help your prints remain consistent without jamming hot end. So my tip for the week, put a fan on your printer. Makes a big difference.
Now, how would you go about doing that, Chris?
Well, most printers already have the board is already wired up, right? So what you just need to do is find somebody that can either laser cut you, or you could 3D print it. If your printer's printing good enough, what you could do is you could design and build your own. Thingiverse might have a design for your particular printer. For me, Trick Laser happened to sell a part. It was like $5 to go and buy the kit to put the little fan on there. You can go buy these little parts. The little fan, it's only like an inch by an inch. little thing, and you just wire it back to the board, and you wire it right in, and then on the software, Repetier or whatever software you're using, just make sure to kick on that fan, make sure cooling is enabled, and what that'll do is that'll actually just run air across the air fins on your head and make sure that the top of the hot end is remaining cool so you don't get any heat creep back up towards your boat end fitting or even your direct drive if you are direct drive. It'll just make sure that the material stays solid where it needs to be and then liquefy exactly where it needs to. So that's my tip for the week.
Cool. Yeah, and I've done something like that as I was showing in the background to my Caso Clear, and it did make a difference. So thank you. So did you just add that, or is it?
No, I've had it on there, but one of the issues I was running into was the older version of Repetier wasn't kicking it on when it needed to, for whatever reason. So now the new version does. So it was now that Repetier has Cura slicer. Cura seems to be more compatible with my printer than the other slicers that I used before. Not saying that those slicers are any worse. Cura is any better. Cura, just for me, seems to be the one that it's faster and is actually making my printer work better now. So it also depends on what slicer you're using.
So how many fans do you have? I noticed on my board, I think I have a Marlin type board. I only have one driver for one fan, but I noticed like on my MakerBot, I have two fans, one for the bed and then one for the hot end or above the hot end, because you don't want the heat to transfer up because that'll gum things up. Mm-hmm. And so do you have two fans on yours?
Right now I only have one, and it works good enough. But at the same time, because it's a constant voltage and you can share a common ground, you could wire up two on that same circuit. I don't think it would be too much, especially if you run big enough wires. I think there's enough power there, like 5 volts is what it needs. You can run two off that same leg. So what you do is you just run them.
Yeah,
same leg.
I did that. I have one on each side of it, but I've been leery of pushing one down a little further, one for the bed and one for the hot end.
Yeah, and then those would both run at the same speed no matter what, because they'd be running on the same circuit. But there are some boards now, like the smoothie board, if you have multiple outputs or whatever. Or you could even run it.
The Rambo also has two as well.
You don't even need to run like a fan that's above there. Doesn't even really need to be run on your Rambo or your actual board. You could just have a variable speed control. You put somewhere else down here and just pass 5 volts right to 2 fans. You turn it on, or you could have two. Yeah, exactly.
This is what I've got, and it's just a standard fan. It's got 2 speeds on it, and I have that pointed at the bed if I need it. But I found, just like you, with the deltas, because they're more open, you don't really need to cool the bed. You just need to ensure that your hot end is regulated. So, thank you, Print Whisperer. So, well, we had other things, but we've kind of tied up an hour. And again, thanks, Colin, for coming out. But I wanted to go out to Amazon, and what was the name of that movie again?
Print
the Legend, right? So I put
it's
in
on Netflix, not Amazon.
Oh, thank you. All right, so I'm going to go out. Okay, no wonder it didn't come up with anything.
It's not quite. Amazon Prime, Netflix. They're basically, the battle is heating up for streaming services.
Yeah, well, it's
just
if
they got a lockdown.
Okay. So let me see. Print the Legend. There it is.
Legend. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have a documentary showing of this. I want to watch it first, kind of screen it, make sure that I like it. I don't want to show people a movie that.
Yeah. Well, I think it'll be fun. Let me jump out to
throw a little party maybe next week or something. I'll have a screening. I've got a whole downstairs theater kind of thing going on.
Yeah, I've got one too. Maybe.
Yeah.
But here it is.
Oh, there's our little buddy. That guy is awesome. I can't wait.
So
it'd be great.
Looks like people like it. So it's out there already. Like I said, it had interesting views. Obviously, here's one of the developers of the Form 1. are the Form one from Formlabs. So again, thanks Colin for coming on and reminding us about this movie. Hey, it's got a lot of fun things, and if you want to know more about the people behind it, we did an interview with them again several months back at South by Southwest that you're welcome to listen to as well. But I think that'll be it. So Chris, why don't you take it from here, and
All right,
we'll
thank you
go.
so much to our listeners. You guys are the best, and we just really appreciate you joining us on our journey in this exciting world that we live in. And definitely a special thanks to Colin for coming on. And
Yes.
we will see you next week.
Bye.